From West Virginia Public Broadcasting.
Support for the Legislature Today has been provided by the following. The High Technology Foundation, headquartered at the I-79 Technology Park in Fairmont. Online at wvhtf.org. Connecting West Virginia families and businesses through high-speed internet services. Learn more about connecting at frontier.com.
At the Legislature today, there's been a mistake, a miscalculation of police and fire retirement funds. The chair of the Senate Pension Committee explains, and the state treasurer says he'll make it right. The House passes a bill regarding selenium standards in water to protect the coal industry. And tonight, a lesson in legislative basics on the Legislature Today. And good evening, I'm Beth Voorhees. The House Finance Committee heard a budget presentation today from the new Attorney General, Patrick Morrisey. As Dave Mistis reports, Morrisey, a Republican, explained a few changes he's made since taking office and asked for money to update communications and computer systems. But he was met with a bit of resistance from the Democrats for other decisions he's made.
That's why we're going to work with you closely to make sure that this office, this committee has transparency into some of the issues that we're seeing, and once again, that some of the processes in the past change. Now, if you think that you can't afford any of the initiatives we're going to talk about today, I'd love the opportunity to learn about that, because once again, we're going to pay for them.
Attorney General Patrick Morrisey gave a budget presentation to the House Finance Committee. He began by outlining a few needs that he referred to as critical and essential. Morrisey called the phone system inoperable and obsolete and requested an additional $260,000 to finance revamping that system. The Attorney General also outlined a few changes to his office, including strengthening the Consumer Protection Division as well as increased investigative resources. He also mentioned a few other changes to policies around his office.
I won't go through much in the way of trinkets now because I think enough people have heard about my position on taxpayer-funded trinkets. By the way, I would note it's taxpayer-funded trinkets that I have a problem with, not trinkets in general. But what's important here is that we end the absolute waste that occurs within state government and within the Office of Attorney General. So you will not be seeing any trinkets with my name or likeness on it, because that's an absolute waste and thinly veiled campaigning. That shouldn't happen. We also have a revised advertising policy.
There were a few moments during the meeting where Democratic delegates presented questions to Attorney General Morrisey that led to a few heated exchanges.
Are any of your inside counsel or outside counsel, when you hire them, let's say as a lawyer, or do they have to have a law license to practice in the state of West Virginia?
Now, this is an issue that a couple people have raised, and let me be very clear. We have been able to bring top flight talent into the state. We were able to, in a coup, attract someone who is a graduate of Yale University, was the editor of the Law Journal, clerked before the Supreme Court, gave up an incredible partnership at a large law firm, makes 1/3 of what he's making now.
Iaquinta was of course referring to the hiring of Albert Lynn, who Morrisey brought in as Solicitor General at a salary of $132,000 a year. Currently, Lynn is without a license to practice law in the state of West Virginia. Just last week, Delegate Doug Reynolds, who is the vice chair of the Finance Committee, introduced House Bill 2788, which would require any attorney employed by the state making over $100,000 be licensed to practice law at the time of hire.
Basically sending a message to people that they are not welcome in the state of West Virginia, and I reject that notion.
Well, I'm not accepting or rejecting. What I'm trying to tell you, and I feel that from my point of view, is we want the best. We just want them to be able to work when they come to work.
And they can work, absolutely.
And I'm more interested in like your future hires, because if you let one come in without, then I'm assuming that there'll be other people that come in, and then will there be a time frame? Let's say 6 months, a year, but kind of like sets a precedent.
While some delegates continued to question hiring practices, Delegate Nancy Peoples-Guthrie of Kanawha County asked about an amicus brief Morrissey filed related to the Second Amendment.
I've been real curious since you took office at some of the things that you have done.
Sure.
Who was the client that you had that asked you to file an amicus brief on the national suits that you've been involved in?
So we did that on behalf of the state of West Virginia.
Who asked you to do that?
We represent.
Which one of your clients
Well, we
asked
represent the state of West Virginia delegate, so we have the ability.
Did the
to
governor
either,
ask you?
No. We have the ability to either independently act as appropriately and/or represent the client. And
Isn't
we've
your
thoroughly
job-
researched this
Isn't
point.
your job to represent agencies within state government? Isn't that your job?
That is part of our job. But as very clear under the case law and under the Constitution, we have the ability to act independently, to intervene. But what we've emphasized across the board in a lot of measures, we try to speak with one voice.
And
so
how
we're
much
appropriate, we
did
work-
that intervention
Sorry?
cost? How much did that intervention cost in man hours from your office?
What
to
in
interve-
particular
How
are you
much did
talking
you
about?
spend to intervene in those cases? Was that free? Did you have man hours
We always have
involved in that
man hours
intervention?
involved in different cases.
About how much money do you reckon you spent?
I wouldn't be able to tell you an exact amount, but I'd say that we have top flight lawyers who act very efficiently.
This was the new Attorney General's first appearance before a legislative committee. For the Legislature Today, I'm Dave Mistich in the House of Delegates.
4 bills passed in the House of Delegates today, including committee substitute for House Bill 2579, which revises water quality standards for selenium, a natural mineral found in water. Selenium discharge is an issue related to coal mining. House Judiciary Chairman Tim Miley explained that currently the standards are set at 20 millionths of a gram per liter of water for acute discharges and 5 millionths of a gram per liter for chronic discharges. He went on to explain why the bill was necessary.
What this bill does is it creates flexibility. If those threshold levels are exceeded, instead of the coal companies getting punishing fines that might put them out of business and put miners out of work, this allows the companies to continue operations, but requires them to continue monitoring their water quality and by taking samples and monitoring the ecological life in the water and submitting them to the West Virginia Water Research Institute at WVU concurrently with the DEP. This is an important bill for the coal industry. I know the Democrats are the primary sponsors of it with a couple of Republicans, but I urge all of us to support this bill because it is important for our coal industry and our miners. I urge passage of the bill.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2579 passed with a 99-0 vote and will be handed over to the Senate for its consideration. The Senate Pensions Committee quickly passed 5 bills today to update language in state code, but Senate Bill 432, a bill relating to functions of the State Treasurer's Office, began a much larger discussion that was specifically focused on a miscalculation of police and fire retirement funds over the past 20 years. Ashton Mara explains.
Senate Bill 432 comes from the State Treasurer's Office and deals with a variety of issues, from Board of Treasury investments to updating obsolete language. The committee took up one specific issue from the bill, a miscalculation detected in an audit of the agency.
Over the years, when we transferred this a couple of years ago, and they established the Oversight Pension Board for the Police and Firemen Pension Funds, I asked for an audit in my office of those funds, and we went all the way back to the beginning, and we started finding these mistakes, and we corrected all those.
The Municipal Pensions Oversight Board was created to oversee the retirement plans of police and firemen in cities statewide and create uniform actuarial reports for the legislature of their pension systems. As they reviewed the audit with the Treasurer's Office, they found mistakes in the distribution of funds.
Bottom line, there is an issue based on calculations and miscalculations and allocations.
The audit showed the Treasurer's Office had been overpaying and underpaying the police and fire pension plans for municipalities to the total of more than $3.5 million. The committee's counsel explained the miscalculation dated back almost 20 years.
This was a miscalculation as it was conducted over the years in the Treasurer's Office. And the Treasurer's Office is working to make good on the error by offering up money that is accrued in accounts that he oversees to make it right for all of those that were shortchanged through the misapplication of the formula to make them whole.
Senate Bill 432 sets forth the plan to do just what Jenkins says, make these municipalities whole. The 34 cities who were underpaid will be compensated from the state's unclaimed properties, a list that's put out multiple times a year by the state treasurer's office. Purdue says there's no time limit as to when the rightful owners can claim the properties on the list that contains things like forgotten bank accounts or utility down payments. But he says funds that have spent years in their system will most likely never be claimed. Those will be used to make payments. The bill also forgives municipalities who were overpaid and does not require them to return any funding. Lisa Dooley, executive director of the West Virginia Municipal League, who worked with legislators to create the oversight board, said this is a fair way to catch up the back payments without punishing overpaid cities who in essence did nothing wrong.
Some of the cities who are overpaid, their plans are actually the most fragile and the most underfunded. And to try to take back money that they have already put into that budget and paid out retirees was near impossible to do. No one ever wanted to sue the cities or bring about anything negative to the cities, but the board did have a fiduciary obligation to look to correct the mistakes that were made.
Aside from correcting the payments to municipalities, the bill sets forth procedures to make sure such miscalculations won't happen in the future. Jenkins says, however, 432 is a substantial bill that does contain other provisions.
The Treasurer's Office had some additional language and cleanup issues and administrative changes that they were interested in. So we put it all into one bill. And so, yes, while the Pensions Committee did focus primarily on the pensions issue, there's a lot more in this bill, and these are provisions that the Finance Committee will look at.
Purdue says there are aspects of the bill he still wishes to negotiate and rewrite before the Finance Committee takes it up. For the Legislature Today, I'm Ashton Mara in the Senate.
In a moment, a review of legislative basics. First, here's a look at some of the bills introduced in the Senate today. Among the bills introduced in the Senate today, Senate Bill 484 to provide immunity from liability for ski patrol rendering emergency care or assistance without compensation at any location. Senate Bill 487 to create the West Virginia Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act. The bill prohibits abortion after 20 or more weeks of pregnancy. Senate Bill 488 to provide additional criminal penalties for trespassing at a coal mine or industrial facility, and restitution for the removal, destruction, injury, or defacement of property belonging to a coal mine or industrial facility. Senate Bill 490 to regulate equine boarding facilities. And Senate Bill 492 to authorize a rural resort community as a limited gaming facility. The bill also repeals the state code relating to a local option election. Up for passage in the Senate on Monday, Senate Bill 125 to permit the Monongalia County Commission to levy a special district excise tax for the benefit of the University Town Center. On second reading on Monday, Senate Bill 386 clarifying the grounds for issuance of a personal safety order for harassment. Senate Bill 387 to grant family court judges the authority to compel and supervise the production of criminal background investigations when appropriate. And Senate Bill 423 to include those sentenced to 6 months in regional jails to be eligible for good time credit. And tonight, a lesson in legislative basics. We've invited Thom Stevens, the president of Government Relations Specialists in Charleston, to join us tonight. Thom has been monitoring the work of the West Virginia legislature for 39 years and joins us to explain how a bill becomes law. Welcome, glad you're here.
Thanks for having me back, Beth.
All right, so I just listed the bills that were introduced in the Senate today.
Right.
Let's go to a graphic to kind of illustrate how a bill becomes law. The bill gets introduced, and then what happens?
Well, actually, it starts even before the introduction because only legislators can introduce a bill. So there are 100 members of the House and 34 members of the Senate. So if an interest group or even an individual wants to see a bill introduced, you've got to find a member or members to do that. Once that's done, it goes through a professional bill drafting process and then goes up to the chambers, we say in the hopper.
Oh, really?
The Speaker is in charge of the House and will assign a bill number and refer it to a committee or committees. Over in the Senate, it's the President that does that. So that's how it begins. That's the beginning of the process.
Okay, and then what happens?
Well, when the bill is introduced, the Speaker or the President, as the case may be, will decide where the bill goes. Usually more than one committee. So our graphic will show just committee reference or committee hearings, but often there is more than one committee when the bill starts out, let's say in the House.
That's when we refer to a second reference.
Exactly.
It's been gone to the Pensions Committee, now it goes to the Finance Committee. That's the second reference.
And you use those terms all the time
Yes,
when
we
you're
do.
explaining how bills move forward. Now you have to understand also that the chairman of the committee has the power to set the agenda. So the bill may never get before the committee at all, the first committee, or if it clears the first and goes to the second, may not get on the agenda for the second committee.
That's the phrase, it's dead in committee, or it died in committee, because it never made it on an agenda, never was discussed, never made it to the second reference, never made it to the floor.
Correct, correct.
All right.
Now, if it is fortunate enough to clear that first committee and let's say that second committee, then it will go back to the full body for 3 separate readings.
Okay, let me just stop you for a second.
Sure.
When does it become a committee substitute?
It's a good question. There are all kinds of things that a committee can do to it. They can amend it by just doing little changes. They can change the whole body of the bill through what we call a strike and insert amendment, or even more changes are in a committee substitute, which is exactly what it says.
Yeah.
It's a substitute of the original bill by a rewrite of the committee.
Hey, wait a minute now. What's a committee substitute for a committee substitute? Because we have those. Committee substitute for the committee substitute.
That's exactly right. We're talking about 2 committees here.
Yeah.
So the first committee would do a committee substitute, send it on to the second committee that didn't agree with what the first committee did, and so they would do a committee substitute for the committee substitute.
Okay.
Yep, exactly.
And finally, it goes to the floor. It's read a first time.
Right, and that's all it is. It's read. No action. Right.
Second reading.
Second reading, we would call it the amendment stage, where any member, doesn't have to be a member of that committee, can offer an amendment on the floor.
And third reading.
And third reading, we would commonly call it as the passage stage in that body. It's not the passage stage of the bill.
Just in that body.
Right.
Yeah.
So, if you're looking at the graphic, what you're going to see is that the floor action on one house, it's sort of the end of the yellow there. If it's passed by that body, then it goes over to the other body where the process
starts all over again.
Exactly, right.
And then it finally goes to the governor.
Not so fast, because it has to pass both sides in exactly the same form.
Yeah.
And then it can go to the governor. Right.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Very quickly, the legislature's website, if we could put up this graphic, it's a terrific website.
It is.
And viewers, you can go there if you haven't already. You can find bills, you can find the Senate calendar and the House calendar. Those are the names of the agendas for the floor session. It is a very, very good easy to use website, very user-friendly website.
You can even listen to the proceedings of the House and the committees on live audio.
All right. Thom Stevens, we're going to have you back because there's more legislative basics that we want to go over. All right.
Would love to do it.
Thank you, Thom.
Okay.
And here's a look at some of the bills introduced in the House today. Among the bills introduced in the House today, House Bill 2867 to provide for an award of the Purple Heart by the Superintendent of the State Police and a Wounded in the Line of Duty registration by the Department of Motor Vehicles to qualified disabled state troopers. House Bill 2869 to provide for justices of the West Virginia Supreme Court, circuit court judges, family court judges, and magistrates to carry concealed firearms in court buildings and offices. House Bill 2870 to create a 50% discount campground rental fee for veterans. House Bill 2873 to provide that the State Board of Education require that public schools provide facilities for students of all faiths and religions to have a place of fellowship, prayer, and worship. House Bill 2874 to require a natural gas company to provide a surface owner on whose property a natural gas producing well is located an amount of free gas per year. Up for passage in the House on Monday, House Bill 2361 to include persons who served honorably in the National Guard and Reserves as eligible veterans for preference in employment training and employment. House Bill 2760 to establish within the legislature complete control over regulation and policy pertaining to firearms, ammunition, and firearm accessories in order to ensure that such regulations and policies is applied uniformly throughout the state. Almost every day, young students from across the state come to the state capitol during the session to meet their legislators and watch the floor sessions. Among the crowd at the Capitol today was a group of aspiring young journalists that West Virginia Public Broadcasting has enjoyed getting to know. Suzanne Higgins reports on the PBS NewsHour Student Reporting Labs.
Freshman delegate Adam Young of Nicholas County was interviewed by a group of constituents this morning, students from the senior broadcast journalism class of Richwood High School.
I think it's good to see young people getting involved and being so informed about issues.
The students are participants in the PBS NewsHour Student Reporting Lab program, an effort that connects high school students to local PBS stations and news professionals. The goal of the mentoring program is for students to generate news video reports about how national and global issues affect their communities. Today, the class is at the Capitol getting comments for two stories they're producing, one on education funding and another on the impact of MTV's Buck Wild series.
I have seen the show Buck Wild, I haven't watched it in depth, and no, I don't believe it's an accurate representation of the people of the state.
With nothing but a camera and laptop in her classroom, teacher Susan Johnson applied to PBS to be part of the NewsHour Student Reporting Labs. She says it's been an amazing experience.
Yes, I felt real comfortable with the journalism end. I knew how to tell the kids, to figure out what the news value is and how to arc a story. But we didn't know anything about a camera except how to turn it on. And since working with Chuck Roberts, our mentor, and Bob Wilkinson with PBS, local affiliate here, we have learned how to use the camera, how to use lighting, how to edit. We've upgraded our software to Final Cut, so the kids are learning state-of-the-art. And when I say the kids are learning, I'm just a facilitator. I just put them in a room and say, figure it out.
Richwood High School is one of 37 schools in the country participating in the program, with 16 public broadcasting stations. The program includes a curriculum of 9 lesson plans and a website that showcases the student videos.
And since we started the program 3 or 4 times, they've already been involved with this. It's a Google type presentation where schools from around the nation get together, put their kids on video, and they have interactive conversations. They've discussed topics from school violence, guns in schools. They even did a story right before the election on the difference that coal made to politics in West Virginia and how Obama's politics versus Romney's politics would affect the election. And it got put up on their national website. So the kids were able to see themselves and see their story on like a national forum. So they were real excited, and from what I've seen, they just pick up the cameras and run with them.
An objective of the Student Reporting Labs is to explore the role of journalism in society and to inspire civic engagement and a lifelong interest in current events. The students say it's working.
I think it's amazing that teenagers at Richwood High School now have a voice. Usually teenagers are like, we can't say nothing because no one's willing to listen to us. But now that our videos are up on the internet and it's on national news, it's amazing because people are starting to take interest at Richwood High School. Like, we used to be downgraded. But now they're starting to say, hey, they're not just a bunch of wild teenagers. They are smart. They have good answers. They know about the world and what's going on. And that just gives us a chance to show our light. Let us shine.
Another goal of the lab is to encourage the next generation of journalists. That seems to be working too.
When I went into my senior year, I had no idea what I wanted to do, but I took speech class figuring, hey, I could have some fun with this, I guess, and I really think communications is what I want to do from now on, so that's what I'm going to study for in college.
The students later interviewed Senator Gregory Tucker of Nicholas County before ending their day at West Virginia Public Broadcasting's downtown studio. They'll head back to school tomorrow and continue to work on additional news reports. For the Legislature Today, I'm Suzanne Higgins at the Capitol.
And they're right here in our studio. This has been the Legislature Today. We'll be back on Monday with all the news and information from the first regular session of the 81st West Virginia Legislature. I'm Beth Voorhees. Thanks for joining us. Good night.
Support for the Legislature Today has been provided by the following. The High Technology Foundation, headquartered at the I-79 Technology Park in Fairmont. Online at wvhtf.org. Connecting West Virginia families and businesses through high-speed internet services. Learn more about connecting at frontier.com.